There we are. Well, I'm not sure if I say good afternoon or good evening. It depends on which season you are in. Um, well, here are some old faces and some new faces. And one fellow in the back here, he's from Indonesia. And that's where I grew up, so we relate somewhat. We have been going through these studies for a few months now, since January. And we are perhaps a third, maybe a little less than a third of the way through the whole series. We started at the very beginning in Genesis 1, verse 1. And now we have gone past it all the way to today. We're going to be talking about the story of Joseph. And Joseph is actually a kind of long story, but I'm going to encapsulate it to make it a little shorter. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and He made the man and the woman. And He put them there, and their situation was very good. They had fellowship with God, but then that was ruined when the one command that He had, the one warning that He had, He told them not to eat from the fruit. They ate it. And so their relationship with God was destroyed at that point. But God had a plan from the very beginning, even before the beginning. He had a plan for restoring the relationship between mankind and Himself. From that time that people sinned against God, they became disobedient to God, the propensity, that is, the way people normally are, humanity is that they tend to drift away from God. They are born separate from Him, not having a relationship with Him. And so we find again and again in this whole story that the same repetition, that people drift away from God, their relationship with Him is ruined, and then He seeks to restore it. This is what happened later on after people had drifted away from God to the point where He saw that nothing was good. It was all bad. And so He planned to send a flood, but He chose one person who had trusted Him, the man named Noah. And He told him, build this boat and equip it with all the food, and then I'm going to bring the animals to you, and because in 120 years, I'm going to bring a flood to destroy everything on the earth. So that's what happened. He trusted God, that God knew what He was talking about, that He was going to send a flood, and He did. Noah built the ark, and therefore, by following God's plan, he was saved, he and his family. That's the story of the flood. Technical difficulties. It's not moving. Huh? Ja? Okay. Now that's weird. That was supposed to be a whole PowerPoint. Well, I'm sorry, but here. There we go. There we go. So then again, after that time, when God had saved Noah and his family through the ark, He saved them, and then after He'd saved them, He said, I am never going to send a flood again. He said, why did he say that? Because people had changed? No, people had not changed. He says, even though every inclination of their heart is evil all the time, I'm making a promise to you that I'm never going to send a flood again to destroy all the people on the earth. So that's what he did. And he gave them a sign, the rainbow in the sky, so that they would know and remember his promise. So he did that. The trouble is, after Noah was saved from that ark, then people began to increase on the earth, but then they lost their way again. They forgot about the true God. They were making their own gods, worshiping their own gods. And they also made a plan to save themselves, a way to get to the heavens. They built this huge building, and that's the story of Babel. And so God disapproved of it, and he destroyed their plans. All the people were speaking one language, and then he separated their languages so that there became English and French and Tagalog and Indonesian and all these other languages, the thousands of languages. So they could not understand each other anymore, so their plans were destroyed. Well, people separated out and filled the earth, but again they lost their way. So he chose one man. He chose one man, and his name was Abram. And he said, I'm going to bless you. Go to this one place that I will show you, and I'm going to bless you, and I'm going to increase your descendants on the earth. And through you and through your descendant, I am going to bless all the nations on the earth. His name was Abram. And he said, look up at the stars. See how many there are, if you can count them. In the same way, the number of your descendants is going to be without number. It'll be a huge number. The trouble is what? What was the problem? Abram and Sarah, they didn't have any children. And now he's 75 years old and she's 65 years old. And they waited and they waited. God did bless them. They had lots of animals. They had lots of money. They had lots of money in that time, gold and silver and cattle and all kinds of good things. But they didn't have any children. They waited for 25 years. And it wasn't happening, and it wasn't happening. When they were 13 years along in that, 12 years along in that, Sarah lost patience. You remember what happened? This is never going to happen, she thought. 87 years old. 77 years old. And he was 87 years old. So she came up with her own plan. You take this servant of mine, and through her, you can have offspring. But that was not God's plan. It has to be God's plan. Just like, remember Cain and Abel. Cain brought his own sacrifice and God didn't accept it. But Abel's sacrifice, he knew what was the right thing to do. He did what God wanted and his was accepted. Noah, he believed God and therefore he made the ark, the only way for them to be saved. And so they were saved because they followed God's plan. One ark, one door, they entered it, and they were saved. God didn't accept this plan of Sarah's. But at the end, God came again. Now Sarah was 89 years old, and Abram was 99 years old. And God repeated the same statement. He said, your wife is going to have a child 1 year from now. Well, that does not sound very likely, huh? 89 years old, and she's going to have a child. That is not natural. So what'd she do? She laughed. Just a little time beforehand, God had said the same thing to Abram, and what did Abram do? He laughed. And God said, why did you laugh? Is anything impossible for me? But 1 year from now, you're going to have a child. That's what happened. Now, you remember the story of Lot. But I think I'll kind of rush over that one, but we'll go on to the next one. Within a year, Sarah became pregnant, and she gave birth to a child, and the child was named He Laughs, or Laughter. Isaac, in their language, means, in our language, it means laughter, or he laughs. Because she said, everyone who hears this news about me, and she said it in a kind of a strange way, she said, whoever would have thought that I would have borne him a child in his old age? She's 90 years old now. In his old age, he's 100 years old. God always does what he says. So she had a child, Isaac. You know what happened later? Isaac, the son of promise, the promised son, through him would come the offspring, and through that offspring all the families of the earth, all the nations of the earth would be blessed. Through him he would increase his descendants. God said, take your son and offer him as a sacrifice to me. He was testing him. You remember, he was testing him. Did he really trust God? Whatever he said. So Abraham did. He took his son. As they were going up this mountain to the place where he would offer his son, Isaac says, Father, yes, son? Here's the wood. Here's the knife. Here's the everything, the string, everything for the sacrifice. Where is the offering? And Abram says, God himself will provide. So what happened? God did provide. Oh, interesting. God did provide. Just as he was ready to sacrifice his son as an offering, offer him up as a sacrifice, God called out, Abram, don't hurt your son. Don't hurt your son. Now I know that you trust me. And because of his trust of God, God counted him as righteous. Not because he was a perfect person. Because Abram, we know some of his life story. He laughed, remember? And also another thing that he did is he slept with someone who wasn't his wife. And what else did he do? He, several times, instead of trusting God to protect him, he lied about his wife, calling him his sister, so that people wouldn't kill him because she was a beautiful woman. So, no, it wasn't because he was perfect, but because he trusted God. He reasoned that even if he sacrificed his son, that God is able to raise him back up from the dead. So he was ready to do that. So, at this point, Isaac is around 20 years old, maybe. We don't know exactly, it doesn't tell us, but he was strong enough to carry a big bundle of wood, his bed, for a very brief moment, there on the altar. He was about 20 years old. Now, Abram is maybe 120 years old. And Sarah, she lived another 10 years. No, she was 130 years when she died. 130 years old now when she died. So by this time, Isaac is probably close to 60 years old. No, 40. No, I don't remember exactly. It doesn't really actually say exactly how old he was. But then his father arranges for him a woman for him to marry. And her name is Rebecca, like the name of our middle daughter. And he's very happy, and he's comforted because of his love for her. He's comforted after the death of his mother. And so Abraham is now 140 years old. And you know what happened after that? He got married again. A glutton for punishment, as some might say. 140 years old, he got married to a woman named Keturah, and they had 5 children together. And he ended up dying at the age of 175. And Isaac, he married Rebekah, and they're 20 years married, and something's a problem. Because how is this going to happen that he increases his descendants when Isaac is the only son and he has no children? Rebekah is not getting pregnant. So, I don't know where the rest of the pictures went, but anyway, so they asked God for help, and she got pregnant and gave birth to twins, Jacob and Esau. Sorry. Isaac was the father. Jacob and Esau. Esau, a hairy, red-colored boy. There it is. And his brother, Jacob. Jacob means heel grabber, which is a euphemism for a deceiver. A heel grabber. And Isaac, they both grew up, and Esau ends up becoming a very manly man, a hunter. He liked going out and hunting for game with his bows and arrows. And his father really liked the game that he brought home, his favorite food. And so he ended up becoming his father's favorite. Where Jacob stayed around the tents, he was close to his mother, probably helped her a bit. She ended up liking him best. Favoritism that often has a sad way that it goes. But anyway, they grew up, and Jacob, of course, he's the younger brother. Esau is the older brother. Normally, the older brothers get the birthright. They get the promise that is passed on from the father, and they get the higher share of the inheritance and also the higher rank, being the older one. But God had said that the younger would end up being the higher ranked one, the one with the higher position. So they remembered that. Still, Esau was scheduled to become the one with a birthright. So one day, Esau was going out and hunting, and he came back. And his brother was waiting for him because he didn't get any game. He didn't have any food with him. He was hungry, and that was a weak moment for him because Esau was, how they say, the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. That was definitely Esau's situation. So he sold for a bowl of stew. He sold his birthright because he didn't care about the promise that God had given to his grandfather and to his father. So, then later on, Jacob, that was kind of a sneaky thing that he did. He waylaid his brother when he was hungry in order to take the birthright from him. Later on, he fooled his father when the father was getting old and said, I'm going to give you the blessing now. Now go and hunt some game, and when you bring it back and cook it for me, then I will bless you. Well, Rebekah heard this, and she thought, now is my opportunity. So I'm going to kind of shorten this a little bit. So he fooled his father into thinking he was the older son. So in that way, he stole the birthright from his brother. His brother was very angry when he learned of this. So Rebekah, she made a plan. She said, go somewhere else and find a wife for you among our relatives in Padan Aram. On the way there, what happened? He fell asleep, because it's a long way. He fell asleep by the side of the road, and he had a dream. And in the dream, God came to him and said, I am with you, and I am going to increase your number. I'm going to bless you, and I'm going to increase your descendants on the earth, and give you the land that I gave to your grandfather, Abram. And so he's very happy about that when he wakes up, and he says, if you do as you've said, a little bit of if, right? A little bit of doubt there. If you do as you said, you will be my God. I will worship you if you take care of me until I come back. So this is what happened when he came. This is where we were last time. This is what happened. He went to Padan Aram, to his relatives. Rebekah's brother, his name was Laban. And I didn't tell you this part in the last time, but back when Rebekah was chosen to get married to Isaac, the servant of Abram who was making the arrangements there, he brought with him a lot of gold, some gold earrings, gold bracelets, and all kinds of things, gold nose rings, and giving them as a bride gift. And Laban was pretty excited about that. Now, Jacob, he came to Padan Aram, and the first thing he meets is a bunch of shepherds. And he said they're all waiting to water their sheep, because they tend to water their sheep together. Someone rolls away the stone that's on top of the well's mouth, and then they start to water their sheep. And he comes there and he says, why aren't you watering your sheep? The day's long still. You can go out and feed your sheep again, graze your sheep. No, we can't do that. We have to wait until everyone's together. Well, then along comes this young lady. And somehow, Jacob gets all strong, right? He's got to show the young lady. And so he, by himself, takes off this big rock. And he says, they meet each other, and he says, I'm your relative. He finds out that she is the daughter of Laban. I'm your relative, and he's in love right away. Love at first sight. Rachel, and she's the younger daughter of the two. Laban's two daughters, Rachel and Leah, is the older daughter. And so he went there, and he ends up spending 21 years there. I don't think he was expecting to stay that long. And after 1 month of helping his relative, Laban, Laban said, well, it's not right. Even though we're close relatives, it's not right that you just work for me free. What would you like? What kind of wages would you like? He said, well, I want your daughter. I want to marry your daughter. I'm willing to work 7 years for her. Sure, that's fine with me. 7 years of free labor. So he worked for him. But he is so in love. Have you ever been in love like that? He is so in love that 7 years seemed like a week. 7 years like 7 days. And it's like nothing. And so when the end is come, 7 years have passed, he's counting the days. When 7 years have passed, he says, I want to get married to her now. Well, remember what his name means? Jacob, he means one who deceives, a deceiver, heel grabber. Here's when Laban deceives. The deceiver is deceived. So they come in for the wedding feast, and probably he's gotten a bit drunk by now. They've got a big old thing going on. And at night, when it's time for them to come together, consummate the marriage, Laban pulls a fast one on him. He replaced Rachel with Leah, the older sister. Lo and behold, when he wakes up in the morning, what on earth? Wrong woman. That's not the arrangement. What have you done to me? Oh, well, in our culture, you can't have the younger marrying first. You have to have the older and then the younger. But don't worry. You can have the younger one as well. Just work another 7 years for her. Okay. Well, he did. Can you foresee what kind of problem what's going to happen from this? He ended up marrying sisters. Can you imagine what's going to happen here? Later on, so many years later, they're going to end up with a law forbidding this kind of thing. Sisters, you cannot marry sisters. Well, there ends up being a little bit of sibling rivalry, some jealousy going on. Jacob works another 7 years for her, and then after that, he works another 7 years, this time for a portion of the flocks. He's working, that is his job. He's a shepherd, taking care of the sheep and the goats. During this whole time, the arrangement is, well, this portion of the flocks is yours, and if, this kind of black sheep are yours, and this one, or the white sheep, or the mixed colored sheep. And during these 7 years, Laban keeps changing the arrangement in order to fool Jacob. But Jacob still ends up on top, and he's doing pretty well for himself. I'll make sure I'm not going... Oh, I have an excuse? Okay, good. My battery's dead in my watch, and now I don't know what time it is. Oh, foiled. So anyway, so Jacob is blessed by the Lord, and Laban's plans do not work very well, and he ends up getting more richer than his father-in-law, Laban. And during this time also, Jacob has 2 wives, and his wives, because of their rivalry, they end up giving their servants to him as wives as well, or concubines. So he ends up with 4 wives now. And by the end of this, he had, it's a kind of interesting story, very drama. I don't know about in Indonesia or some of these other countries, but Filipinos like drama. This is a drama story. So Jacob he ends up with 10 children. Actually, 11 children by the end of this period. And now it's been 21 years that he's there. And now his father-in-law is starting to get pretty sour toward him. Not happy about the arrangement. So they make up a plan and he leaves. He and his wives. Now he has lots of flocks and herds. He's a rich man and he has 11 sons. And his favorite wife has always been Rachel. That's his first love. Leah, though, gets more children with him. So he ends up with 11. Rachel only had one child at this point, and the name of that child was Joseph. Here's where this story finally begins. So he ends up, they went back and they got back, and by this time, his mother, Rebekah, is no more. And on the way there, as they're getting close, they're going to meet up with his father. His wife actually dies. Rachel died in childbirth. She gave birth to another son, Joseph's younger brother. His name was Benjamin. And so because Joseph and Benjamin are the sons of his favorite wife, they are automatically his favorite sons. You know what ends up happening. Favoritism often destroys relationships and families. So now, Rachel is dead. Joseph is now his favorite son, his older son from Rachel. Now they're growing up. Joseph is, by this time, a teenager. And his father, because of his love for his favorite son, he makes this beautiful robe. We don't know what it looked like, a beautiful robe. And when the brothers saw this, jealousy sprang up. And they could not speak a good word toward him. They were angry all the time toward him. And another problem was that Joseph, he would go out and visit his brothers as they're tending the sheep and they're going here and there and planting wheat and whatnot. He would go and check up on them, and when they come back to his father, he would bring a report on how they're doing. And not all the reports were good. A tattletale. Nobody likes a tattletale, right? So, then, to make matters worse, Joseph gets a dream. He dreams one night that they are all harvesting their grain, and as they harvest it, as we do in the Philippines as well, in Indonesia with the rice, they bundle it up in bundles to let it dry out before threshing it and whatnot. They bundle it in bundles. And in his dream, they all have their separate bundles, and all their bundles bow down to his bundle. And they said, "Oh yeah? You're the younger brother. I'm bowing down to you. Do you think you're going to be a king over us?" Now they hate him. And then he dreams again. And like a young guy might do, he tells that story too, and even though it has the same meaning. This time, as I watched in my dream, 11 stars and the moon and the sun all bowed down to me. And the father says, "What? Do you mean even me, myself and your mother, or we're going to bow down to you? What do you mean? What are you thinking, boy?" Right? What are you thinking? So, now they really hate him. One day, all the brothers had gone off to tend sheep in a different place down in Dothan, some ways away. And he went, his father said, "Go check up on your brothers, see how they're doing." So he went, and he eventually found them in Dothan. And they saw him coming. There he is. He's coming, that dreamer. What shall we do? What shall we do? We'll just kill him, and then we'll see what happens with his dream. Now, Reuben, he had a bit of a drama story of his own. He had done something very wrong that his father had learned about, something very shameful. And he wanted to get on the good side of his father, and he's the oldest brother. So Reuben, he hears them talking about killing the brother, and he wants to get on his father's good side, so he thinks, now's my chance. Now's my chance. I'm going to save my brother. So he says, no, let's not kill him. Let's just throw him down into this pit. Because he was thinking, I'll come back later when my brothers aren't here, and I'll save him, and then bring him back to the father, and it'll be good. Well, he went off somewhere. And his brothers are sitting there having a meal together. They'd thrown their brother into the pit and taken his robe and thrown it into the pit. And while Reuben is off, they look up and they see a caravan of people, of traders coming, Ishmaelites or Midianites, descendants of Ishmael. And they saw them coming, and they said, here's our chance. Now, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, the first four brothers, Judah, he came up with a plan. Here's what we do. Instead of us killing him, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites as a slave, and then we'll get money, and it won't be us who are guilty of the bloodshed. So they took him out of the pit, and they sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. I guess a standard price for a slave. A little later, Reuben came back. Where's Joseph? Look here. We got a little cash for him. What? What have you done? What am I going to tell our father? What am I going to tell our father? Oh, don't worry. We got a plan. They took that robe that he'd taken off Joseph, and they ripped it a bit and tore it up a bit, and they killed a goat and put it in the goat's blood. And they showed it to their father. Father, we found this coat. Do you recognize it? It's Joseph's coat. He's surely been killed by a lion. He's dead. And he mourned for him a very long time. In the meantime, Joseph, thrown into a dry well, Joseph was taken down to the land of Egypt. And sold there. He was sold to the captain of the guard of the king of Egypt. They called, in their language, Pharaoh. We don't know which Pharaoh that was. There are some guesses about that. And he was sold to Potiphar, the captain of the king's guard. And he served him as a slave for a while. But God had not forgotten Joseph. And Joseph was doing a very good job. He was doing his very best, and God blessed him. Everything that he did, everything that he set his heart to do, he did well. Now, we're nearing the end of the story here, but we'll continue on the next time. But he was doing he was being faithful. He was doing the very best that he could. Potiphar had a wife. Potiphar's wife began to take notice of Joseph. Wow, he's a looker. He's a good-looking young lady, and she started to like him, lust after him. And every day she kept on trying to force him to do things with her that he shouldn't. And one day, she was getting very frustrated. One day, he said, "No, I can't do that. I can't do that. Your husband, he has given me every responsibility in the house. He trusts me completely, and I cannot do that to him or to God." Joseph had a respect for God. He knew God sees everything. He knows everything, every inclination of the heart. He knows everything. He couldn't do that. Now, but she didn't give up. One day, she had ordered all of the servants out of the house, and Joseph went in there to fulfill his responsibilities in the house, perhaps cleaning, I don't know. He's in the house, and she grabs him, and she says, "Come to bed with me." And he ran out of that house. That is the right responsibility. Remember Cain? Remember when Cain started to get very angry toward his brother and jealous toward his brother, and God came to him and he said, Cain, be careful. Sin wants to defeat you, but you must defeat it. But he didn't listen. So he ended up killing his brother. Joseph, on the other hand, he fled from evil. He wanted to defeat it. He was afraid. He wasn't toying with temptation. He ran from evil. But Potiphar's wife, in her frustration, she made up some stories and said that he'd tried to do wrong things to her, tried to force himself on her. And so she told her husband that, and he ended up being thrown into prison. We'll continue the story there, but remember, even in the prison, God had not forgotten Joseph. Joseph put his trust in God, and God took care of him. God always saves those who put their trust in him, just like he did with, can you think of others that he saved? Just like he did with Noah. Noah placed his trust in God. God saved him and his family. Lot trusted God, and God saved him and his family. Unfortunately, his wife, he wasn't able to, because she hadn't trusted God. But he trusts those, he saves those, he's able to save those who put their trust in him. He always does that. He is faithful. He's faithful. He always does what he says. Abram had learned to trust God. He learned, after 25 years of experience waiting for this one child, he had learned that God is trustworthy. What is impossible for us, 100 years old, his wife 90 years old, she gave birth because God said. He'd learned to trust God. And that's what God wants. That's what God wants. He will always save those who put their trust in him. Also here with Joseph. He saved Joseph. But this isn't the end of the story. Now he's in prison. Sometimes it takes a little while. Sometimes we have to wait to see the fulfillment of God's promises, right? Joseph he's been some years already. He was 17 when he was made a slave and brought into the land of Egypt. He had to wait a long time before he saw God's salvation for him, before he saw how God would help him. He had been faithful, and now he ends up in prison, even though he'd done the right thing, accused of wrong. He was sold for 20 pieces of silver, rejected by his own family, not his father, of course, but by his own brothers, and sold. But he didn't lose sight, and he was faithful. He didn't lose sight of God's promise, and God did use him, did save him. That's next week's story. How did he do that? That's all for this time. Oh, one more thing before I finish this. I'd mentioned this another time, but it's been a couple weeks now since we've been on this series. Last week there wasn't a lesson here. You may remember that God had made a promise to Abraham. This is Joseph's great-grandfather, Abraham. He said that your people, your descendants, will one day become strangers in another land, foreigners in another land. Like me, I'm a foreigner, and some of you are also foreigners. They're going to become foreigners in another land, and then they're going to be mistreated for 400 years. They're going to be there, and then I will save them out of that land. Now, Joseph is in another land, a foreigner there. This is the beginning of the fulfillment of God's promise to Abraham. It had been many years since God made that promise, but God doesn't forget. He always is faithful. Thank you.